My name is Ethan Cross, and if someone had told me that a simple invitation to a reunion would change my life forever, I wouldn't have believed them. But here I am, standing outside the cold, dimly lit gates of Ashwood Estates, a place that I hadn't thought about in over a decade. The air smelled of rain and wet leaves, and the distant hum of the city seemed miles away. I could already feel the shadows creeping along the cobblestone path, as if the mansion itself was waiting, breathing, watching. The letter had arrived a week ago, typed on pristine stationery with no signature. Only a single line: "Come back, everything you left behind matters now." I had stared at it for hours, every nerve in my body alert. Memories I had buried, painful, haunting, guilty memories, started clawing their way to the surface. And yet curiosity, that relentless human flaw, pushed me forward. As I stepped onto the main porch, the wooden boards groaned under my weight. The mansion loomed, gothic and menacing, its windows dark but reflecting the lightning flashing in the storm clouds above. A sense of nostalgia mixed with dread settled in my chest. This was the house of my childhood summers, where laughter once echoed through the halls and where secrets were whispered behind closed doors. I paused at the front door, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the brass handle. The door swung open silently, almost invitingly. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old wood, candle wax, and something else I couldn't place, something metallic, almost like iron. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but another part, the part that had always chased mystery, urged me in. The hallway stretched before me, lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Their eyes seemed alive, following me with a quiet judgment. I couldn't help but shiver. I had always known this house held secrets, but I never imagined the depth of them. Then I saw her. A woman stood at the far end of the hallway, framed by flickering candlelight. She was tall, elegant, with piercing green eyes that seemed to cut straight into me. Her hair, jet black and cascading in waves, shimmered like the night. She smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that hides 1,000 intentions. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice smooth, almost hypnotic. "You finally came. Who are you?" I managed to whisper. She tilted her head, studying me like a predator studying prey. "Someone who knows everything you've tried to forget." My heart raced. The past I thought I had left behind was alive, breathing, and waiting for me. I remembered her now, Lydia Voss, the girl who had been more than a friend, more than a confidant, the one whose betrayal had shattered everything. But she had disappeared that night after the incident that no one talked about. And now she was here in this mansion, and I couldn't escape the feeling that everything was about to unravel. "Why am I here?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. Lydia's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. "To finish what was started, or to face what you should have faced years ago." A sudden noise behind me made me spin around. Shadows danced across the walls, and I saw the faint outline of someone or something moving just out of reach. My pulse thudded painfully in my chest. The mansion felt alive, almost as if it were aware of my presence, whispering threats in a language I didn't understand. Lydia stepped closer, her voice lowering to a seductive, dangerous whisper. "Do you remember the night of the fire, Ethan? Do you remember what you left behind?" I froze. That night had haunted me for years. A fire had broken out in the east wing of the mansion, a fire that had taken something precious from me, something I blamed myself for losing. And I had run, leaving the house, leaving the guilt, leaving Lydia, or at least I thought I had. "You shouldn't have come back," I said finally, my voice trembling despite my attempts at control. "Some things are better left buried." "But they never stay buried, Ethan," she replied, her green eyes glinting with something unreadable. "Not when the past has teeth." The air grew colder, and I could see my breath forming in faint clouds. The candlelight flickered violently, casting monstrous shadows across the walls. Somewhere deep in the mansion, a clock struck midnight, echoing like a gunshot. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but curiosity and something darker, something I couldn't name, kept me rooted in place. Then I heard it. A faint whisper, almost too soft to hear, coming from the staircase that spiraled into the darkness above. "Ethan!" I turned toward it, heart hammering. My rational mind screamed at me to leave, but another part, darker, hungrier, drove me forward. Each step toward the stairs felt heavier, like I was walking through water. Shadows seemed to twist and writhe along the walls, and the temperature dropped further, biting at my skin. Lydia followed silently, her presence both comforting and terrifying. She reached for my arm as I stepped onto the first stair, her touch icy but commanding. "They're waiting," she said simply, "and they won't forgive you for leaving." I didn't understand. Who was waiting? What had I left behind? And why did the mansion feel like a living, breathing thing, watching my every move, knowing my every fear? As I reached the top of the stairs, the air thickened with tension, suffocating yet electric. The whispering grew louder, circling me, taunting me. I could almost make out words, fragments of memories and warnings, all tangled with the scent of smoke and decay. Lydia stopped, letting go of my arm. She gestured toward the end of the hallway where a single door stood, ancient and heavy. Its surface was scarred, as if clawed by someone or something. "Behind this door," she said, "is the truth about the fire, about us, about everything you thought you knew." My hands shook as I reached for the handle. My entire body screamed against it, against the danger I felt pressing in from all sides, but I couldn't stop. I had to know. I turned to Lydia, but she was gone, just like that, vanished into the shadows, leaving only a faint whisper of her voice. "It's time, Ethan. Face it or be consumed by it." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay beyond the door. I didn't know what I would find. I didn't know if I'd survive what awaited me. But one thing was certain: my life as I knew it was about to end, and something far darker, far more twisted, was about to begin. And with that thought, I pushed the door open. The moment I stepped through the door, the air shifted. It wasn't just cold, it was as if the darkness itself had weight, pressing against my chest, making every breath a struggle. The hallway on the other side was narrow and winding, lined with faded wallpaper that seemed to whisper in the shadows. Faint scratches marred the walls, jagged lines that looked almost deliberate, like someone had tried to claw their way out or in. I hesitated, gripping the edges of the door frame. The whispers that had followed me up the stairs now grew louder, almost intelligible. My name, repeated in soft, hollow tones. "Ethan, Ethan, Ethan." The sound made my skin crawl. Somewhere deep inside, I felt that the mansion wasn't just haunted, it was alive, feeding on fear and regret. Footsteps echoed behind me, but when I turned, the hallway was empty. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my shaking hands. "Lydia," I called, my voice barely more than a whisper. The silence that followed was absolute, except for the faint, persistent whispering. The hallway opened into a wide chamber. Once, this had been a grand library, shelves towering with books that smelled of dust and old paper. Now most of them lay in ruins, torn, scattered, pages ripped out and strewn across the floor. But in the center, illuminated by a single shaft of moonlight breaking through a cracked window, stood an object that froze me in place. It was a box, small and unassuming, carved from dark wood that gleamed unnaturally in the dim light. Strange symbols were etched into its surface, symbols I didn't recognize but somehow instinctively understood were dangerous. The whispers crescendoed as I approached it, and my heart pounded painfully against my ribs. I reached out, hesitating just an inch away from the box. A voice, low and chilling, suddenly filled the room. "Do you know why you're here, Ethan?" I spun around, my pulse quickening. Lydia emerged from the shadows, her green eyes glowing with an intensity that was almost unreal. "I warned you," she said softly, "that everything you thought was buried is alive." "What is this?" I asked, nodding toward the box. Lydia knelt beside it, tracing her fingers over the carvings. "This contains the truth, the part of your past that you ran from. Everything you feared, everything you left behind, it's all inside." Her gaze met mine. "Do you have the courage to face it?" I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it nearly impossible to speak. I had tried to escape my past for years, burying the guilt, the fear, the regret beneath layers of lies and avoidance. But standing here with Lydia's unwavering gaze and the sinister energy radiating from the box, I realized there was no running anymore. I nodded, my hands trembling as I lifted the lid. The air grew colder still, and the whispers became a chorus, swirling around me like a living thing. Inside was a journal, its cover worn and familiar. I recognized it immediately, my father's handwriting on the front. My stomach twisted. I hadn't seen this journal in years. It had been locked away, hidden in the east wing that had burned. I opened it, the pages brittle beneath my fingers. The first entry was dated the night before the fire. My father's words were frantic, full of warning and fear. The house isn't what it seems. What we've built here, it hungers. Protect the children, protect Ethan, trust no one. My hands shook as I flipped through more pages. The entries became darker, filled with cryptic warnings about the mansion and its watchers, entities that fed on human weakness and fear. And then I reached a passage that made my blood run cold. Lydia knows she must not be trusted. The boy is not ready, and if he touches the wrong thing, the house will claim him. Mark my words, only by confronting the truth can he survive. I looked up at Lydia, and for the first time I felt real fear, not just from the mansion, but from her. Her smile had vanished, replaced by a hardness I hadn't seen before. Did you know about this? I demanded. Her eyes softened, but only slightly. I knew what the house would do if you returned unprepared. I tried to warn you, but you had to come. Before I could respond, the room trembled violently. Dust and loose debris fell from the ceiling, and the whispers turned into anguished screams. Shadows twisted along the walls, forming grotesque shapes that moved with purpose, as if alive. My pulse raced, adrenaline surging through every vein. Ethan. Lydia shouted over the chaos. You have to finish it, whatever you left behind, face it now. I clutched the journal to my chest, heart hammering. The shadows drew closer, writhing like smoke, circling us. And then I saw it, a figure emerging from the darkness, faintly familiar. A child, pale and trembling, eyes wide with fear. My stomach dropped. It was me. Or rather, the memory of me from the night of the fire, frozen in terror. The child stepped forward, hand outstretched toward me, and I realized the truth the journal hinted at but never fully revealed. The mansion wasn't just a place. It was a trap, a mirror of guilt and regret, pulling the past into the present, forcing you to confront your deepest fears. Tears welled in my eyes as the child spoke in a voice that was both mine and not mine. You left me, you left us. Everything shattered inside me. The fire, the screams, the betrayals I had buried, they weren't gone. They were alive, and they were demanding reckoning. I knew instinctively that the only way to survive this night, the only way to stop the house from consuming everything, was to face it fully, no matter how painful, no matter how terrifying. Lydia stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. You're ready, Ethan, this is your test. Confront it, or the house will devour more than just your soul tonight. I drew in a shaky breath and opened the journal fully, resolving to see everything through. The shadows hissed and lunged, the air thick with fear, but I stepped forward, gripping the pages like a lifeline. Whatever waited for me in the mansion, whatever horrors and betrayals, I would face them, because this was no longer just about survival. This was about confronting the sins of the past, the mistakes that had shaped me, and the darkness that had grown in the corners of my life for far too long. And with that resolve, I took the first step into the heart of Ashwood Estates, toward the truth, no matter how twisted, no matter how bloody. The moment I stepped deeper into the mansion, the shadows seemed to pulse around me, shifting like living smoke. Each step echoed ominously on the cracked floorboards, the sound magnified in the silence that clung to the walls. My grip on the journal tightened. Pages rustled in the unnatural draft that swept through the hallway, as if the mansion itself were breathing, watching, judging. Lydia followed closely, her eyes scanning every corner, alert. It's feeding off your fear, she said, her voice low. The more you hesitate, the stronger it becomes. Don't think, Ethan, move. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and nodded. My past was waiting for me, hiding in the darkness. Every corner, every shadow could be another memory, another trap. The mansion didn't just trap you physically, it manipulated your mind, weaving illusions so vivid that you could barely tell reality from nightmare. As we turned a corner, I froze. The hallway ahead was lined with mirrors. Not ordinary mirrors, they reflected not just my image, but fragments of my memories. In one pane, I saw my childhood self standing alone in a burning room. Another showed me running through endless corridors, chased by figures whose faces were twisted with malice. And in the largest mirror, my reflection didn't move on its own. It smiled, a cruel, mocking smile that I did not make. I felt nausea rise in my chest. This isn't real, I whispered, though even as I said it, my reflection's grin widened. Real or not, it's your truth, Lydia said firmly. Face it, don't look away. I took a deep breath and stepped closer. The mirror shimmered, and suddenly the image of my younger self began to move independently, reaching out through the glass. My knees nearly buckled as I realized it wasn't just a reflection, it was the mansion pulling my memory into the present. The child me spoke again, voice trembling. Why did you leave me? Why didn't you save us? Every nerve in my body screamed. I had buried that guilt for years, convincing myself that survival meant leaving the past behind. But the mansion didn't forgive. It forced you to confront the worst of yourself, the choices that had left scars on others and on your soul. I opened the journal, hoping for guidance. My father's words seemed to jump off the pages, screaming warnings I had ignored for too long. To survive, Ethan, you must embrace what you fear. Only then will the house release its hold. I exhaled shakily. This wasn't about escaping the mansion, it was about accepting the truth. About facing the consequences of my actions and mistakes. I stepped closer to the mirror, extending my hand toward the smaller version of myself. I didn't leave you, I stammered, fighting tears. I was scared. I thought I could fix it later. I thought I could protect everyone by leaving. The child's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment the shadows seemed to pause, but then the glass cracked, sharp lines slicing through the reflections, and the mansion groaned like a living beast. Dark tendrils shot from the broken mirror, wrapping around my legs, trying to pull me in. Ethan, Lydia shouted, grabbing my arm, you have to fight it. Focus. I clutched the journal like a weapon, flipping frantically until I found a page marked with a black ribbon. The words were strange, almost ritualistic. Speak the truth aloud, name your sins, embrace the pain, and the path will open. Fear is the chain, courage is the key. I swallowed the lump in my throat, my voice trembling but growing stronger with each word. I failed. I failed to protect those I loved. I failed to act when I should have. I let fear control me. I am sorry. The shadows recoiled, hissing as if burned by the honesty in my voice. The mirror began to crack further, and the image of my younger self stepped out, merging with me. I felt an intense surge of relief, guilt, and fear mixing into something like clarity. Lydia exhaled, her eyes wide but proud. Good, now keep moving. The hallway twisted before us, bending in ways that defied logic. Stairs rose and fell into darkness, doors appeared where there had been walls. It was a labyrinth designed to disorient, to trap the mind as much as the body. And yet, for the first time, I felt stronger. The fear was still there, but I wasn't paralyzed. I could see through the illusions. We entered a massive ballroom, once opulent, now shattered and decayed. Chandeliers hung crooked, draped in cobwebs, reflecting faint light that made the dust sparkle like falling stars. And there, in the center, stood a figure cloaked in black, face hidden. The whispers around us surged, growing into a deafening roar. Who are you? I demanded, my voice steady despite the terror rising in my chest. The figure slowly lifted its head. Even in the shadows, I recognized the shape of a familiar face, my mother, but her eyes were hollow, empty. Her voice was like ice, sharp and cold. You shouldn't have returned, Ethan. You were warned. You never deserved forgiveness. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. Every memory I had buried, every lie I had told myself to survive, now confronted me in the flesh. And yet I remembered the journal, my father's words, Lydia's guidance. I accept it, I said, voice echoing through the room. I accept the pain, the mistakes, and the fear. I won't run from it anymore. The figure paused, tilting her head, studying me. The shadows around her seemed to falter, writhing like smoke in the wind. And then slowly she smiled, not cruel, not mocking, but sad. The hollow eyes softened, and the figure began to dissolve into light, leaving behind a calm that was almost unbearable in contrast to the chaos we had endured. The ballroom fell silent. The shadows receded, and for the first time I could breathe without the weight of the mansion pressing down on me. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The mansion had more secrets, more horrors, and more truths that I would have to face before the night was over. Lydia's hand found mine again. You're ready for the next step, she said softly, but be careful. The house doesn't forgive, and the next trial is closer than you think. I nodded, swallowing hard. My journey had only just begun and the mansion still had its claws deep in the dark corners of my mind. But now, for the first time, I was prepared. I could face whatever it threw at me. I had to, because Ashwood Estates wasn't just a house, it was a reckoning and I would survive it. We didn't stay in the ballroom for long. The mansion seemed to sense our presence and the walls groaned as if warning us to leave or face consequences we couldn't imagine. The air grew colder with each step, carrying the faint scent of damp wood and something else, something metallic. My heart beat faster. The shadows no longer just lingered, they seemed to follow us, brushing against our legs, whispering words I couldn't quite hear. Lydia's grip on my arm tightened. "There's a room up ahead," she whispered. "The truth waits there, but be prepared, what you'll see might shatter you." I nodded, swallowing the lump of fear rising in my throat. Part of me wanted to turn back, to escape the mansion and its horrors, but another part, the part that had faced my past in the mirrors, pushed me forward. I couldn't run anymore, not from the house, not from myself. The hallway narrowed, walls closing in, adorned with paintings so lifelike that I half expected the eyes to follow me. And in each painting I noticed something chilling, shadows moving independently of the figures, twisting and writhing as if alive. My pulse quickened. I had seen illusions before, but these were different. These were warnings. At the end of the corridor, a massive door appeared, blackened with age, carved with symbols that made my skin crawl. The door seemed to hum, vibrating with a low, menacing energy. Lydia placed a hand on it, her eyes scanning the intricate patterns. "This is it," she said. "The heart of Ashwood, the mansion's secrets, its darkest truths. Are you ready?" I took a deep breath, nodding, as ready as I'll ever be. We pushed the door open and the room beyond was vast, almost cathedral-like. Moonlight streamed through shattered windows, casting jagged shadows that danced across the floor. In the center, a pedestal held an object covered with a tattered cloth. The air was thick, heavy, as if breathing it in would weigh down my very soul. I stepped closer, curiosity mixed with dread. What is it?" I asked. Lydia hesitated. "I don't know entirely. But legends say it holds the mansion's memory, the essence of everyone who's suffered here, who's been trapped. It's said that facing it reveals everything, even things you've buried so deep you didn't know existed." My hands trembled as I reached for the cloth, pulling it away. Beneath it lay a mirror, black as obsidian, its surface swirling like liquid night. But it wasn't empty. Shapes moved within it, fleeting images of people, places, events. And then a face emerged, my face, but older, hollowed, twisted by fear and regret. A voice echoed in the room, soft but unmistakable. "You've come far, Ethan, but are you ready to see the truth?" I swallowed hard. I have to," I said, though my voice shook. The mirror rippled and suddenly I was no longer in the room. I was in a memory, or perhaps a vision of the past. I saw my family, the house I had left behind, burning, screams filling the air. I saw myself running, hiding, terrified, leaving someone behind. The guilt I had carried for years came crashing down, raw and suffocating. "This is it," Lydia's voice said, though she wasn't beside me anymore. "This is the part you've avoided all your life." I saw my younger brother trapped beneath rubble, eyes wide with fear, calling my name. I had chosen survival over him. The memory was vivid, every sound, every smell, every heartbeat magnified. Pain, regret, anger, it all surged through me. I fell to my knees, unable to bear it. "You abandoned him," the mirror whispered, my own voice twisted, accusing. "You abandoned us all." Tears blurred my vision. I had told myself so many lies to survive, so many excuses, but the mansion didn't care. It demanded the truth. I was scared, I choked out. I didn't know what to do. I thought I could fix it later. I thought running was the only way to save anyone. The mirror shivered, black ripples spreading outward, and then a new figure appeared, someone I didn't expect. A woman, familiar yet unrecognizable. Her hair was silver, her eyes fierce. She radiated authority, pain, and anger. "Ethan," she said, voice echoing in the void, "you've seen pieces of the past, but you've never understood why the house chose you, why it always has." I don't understand," I stammered. "Why me, why now?" "Because you were the one who could confront it," she said. "Not run, not hide. You have the courage to face what others cannot, but courage alone isn't enough. You must act, you must atone." Images swirled around me, the mansion, the victims, shadows of countless people trapped in despair. And then, a choice appeared, two paths, one leading deeper into darkness, the other uncertain but offering a glimmer of light. You have to choose, Ethan, the woman said. Face the darkness or become part of it forever. I hesitated, heart pounding. The shadows reached toward me, whispering, tempting me, promising release if I gave in. But the vision of my brother, of those I had failed, and of the people still trapped in the mansion, steeled my resolve. I choose the light, I said firmly, though fear clawed at my chest. The mirror exploded in a blinding flash, the room shaking violently. Shadows screamed, twisting into grotesque forms before dissolving into nothing. The air grew calm, almost serene, and I found myself back in the cathedral-like room, Lydia beside me, eyes wide but proud. You did it, she whispered. You faced it and survived, but there's more. This was only the beginning. I looked at the black mirror, now shattered, pieces glinting like fragments of night scattered across the floor. The mansion was quiet, almost peaceful, but I knew better. Ashwood Estates never truly rested. Its trials were far from over. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past still pressing on me, but also a spark of hope. For the first time, I felt capable of facing the horrors ahead. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was fighting back, and I would not fail again. The silence after the mirror's shattering was deafening. For a few moments, it felt like the mansion itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. I looked at Lydia and she gave me a small, steadying nod. Her eyes told me that she believed in me even if I didn't fully believe in myself. The next step, she said softly, is the library. It holds the records, the names of everyone who came before, and maybe a way to stop Ashwood once and for all. The hallway leading to the library was lined with bookshelves taller than any building I had ever seen. Dust hung thick in the air, illuminated by thin beams of moonlight slicing through cracked windows. Every step I took sent tiny clouds swirling around my feet. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. Lydia kept her lantern raised high. These books, they're not just books, she warned. They remember, they contain the memories of everyone who entered this house. Read them and you might find what you need. Misstep and the house might claim you as it did them. I nodded, though fear gnawed at the edges of my mind. I wanted answers, but I didn't want to be consumed by them. Every instinct screamed at me to run, yet every part of me, every scar, every regret drove me forward. We reached the library doors. They were massive, carved from black oak, and adorned with symbols I didn't recognize. As Lydia pushed them open, the room revealed itself in all its eerie glory. Books floated in the air, some glowing faintly, others moving as if guided by invisible hands. Shadows stretched along the floor like living things. A voice, distant yet insistent, whispered through the stacks, "Ethan, remember." I swallowed hard. The sound of my name in that hollow, echoing tone sent a chill down my spine. Lydia guided me to a central table. There, an enormous book lay open, its pages worn and yellowed with age. The writing was delicate but precise, almost alive. Names were inscribed in gold ink, some crossed out, others left untouched. Beside each name were dates, places, and sometimes a short description of their demise. "Everyone who's come before us," Lydia said, her voice trembling slightly, "and most never left." I felt the weight of countless lives pressing down on me, people I had never met, yet whose stories intertwined with this cursed mansion. My stomach churned as I read the first few pages. A couple trapped in a fire, a man lost to his own reflection, children vanished without trace. And then I saw it, my brother's name. I froze, my heart pounded in my ears. I had never seen it here, never imagined it could be recorded in such a way. Beside his name was a date, the day he died, and a note, left behind, unredeemed. Tears welled in my eyes, the guilt, the sorrow, all the what-ifs came flooding back. I hadn't just survived, I had failed him, and now this house held the record of my failure. "You can change it," Lydia whispered. "Not erase the past, but redeem yourself. The mansion, it tests, it judges. But if you face the darkness and succeed, you can release those trapped souls, including him." "How?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The heart of the house lies below this library," Lydia said. She pointed to a trapdoor at the center of the floor. You must descend, but beware, Ashwood will try to deceive you. Fear, guilt, illusions, it will throw everything at you. I swallowed, staring at the dark opening. I felt the pull of my brother's memory urging me downwards, but a part of me still hesitated. I had faced mirrors, shadows, and the haunting truth of my own cowardice, but what awaited below was unknown. I took a step forward, then another. With each step, the air grew colder, thicker, almost alive. My heartbeat echoed in the wooden chamber. The trapdoor creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a spiral staircase that descended into darkness. Ethan, Lydia said, her hand resting briefly on my shoulder. Remember, the mansion feeds on fear. You must stay focused and trust yourself. I nodded, trying to absorb her words. I started down the staircase. The steps seemed endless, winding deeper and deeper. Shadows flickered along the walls, forming shapes that resembled past victims, their eyes hollow, their mouths open in silent screams. Suddenly I heard whispers, names, voices calling out, pleading, accusing. Ethan, why did you leave me? You can't save us. Turn back. I clenched my fists. I could feel my sanity fraying at the edges. The air felt electric, alive with malice. But then I focused on one image, my brother, small, frightened, reaching out. That image steadied me. The spiral staircase ended in a vast chamber. Stone walls, dripping water, and in the center, a pool of black liquid shimmering with an unnatural light. From it, a figure emerged, a shadow darker than anything I had seen, with eyes glowing red and a presence that made my knees weak. I am Ashwood, it said, voice echoing from all directions. You dare challenge me? I stepped forward. Fear surged, but I didn't run. I could feel the house trying to manipulate my thoughts, showing me visions of despair, of death, of giving up. But every memory of my brother, every life lost here, drove me onward. You don't own them, I shouted. You don't own me. Ashwood laughed, a sound that chilled my bones. You cannot win. Every soul here is mine. You will join them or fail trying. I gritted my teeth, stepping closer to the black pool. My reflection appeared on its surface, not my face but my brother's. His eyes pleaded for me, and suddenly I understood. To defeat the house, I couldn't fight it with force. I had to confront my guilt, my fear, and my failures. Only by accepting them, acknowledging them, could I release its hold. I took a deep breath and spoke aloud. I failed, I was scared, but I won't run anymore. I face this not for me, but for them. For every soul trapped here, and for you, my brother, I will make this right. The chamber shook violently, shadows writhed, the black pool rippled, and Ashwood's form wavered. I could feel the energy shift. My courage, my acceptance, my love for the lost souls, it was stronger than its fear. And then, a blinding light exploded from the pool, engulfing everything. I felt myself being lifted, swept through memories, through faces, through time itself. Every soul trapped in Ashwood screamed, then sighed. And for the first time in decades, the house was silent. I collapsed to the stone floor, exhausted but alive. The black pool had vanished. Shadows no longer lingered. The chamber felt empty yet peaceful. Lydia appeared at the stairs, smiling softly. You did it, Ethan, you freed them. And you're finally free too. I sank to my knees, overwhelmed by relief, guilt, and a strange sense of closure. Ashwood had tested me, tormented me, and in the end, I had endured. I had faced my past, and now perhaps I could begin again. But deep in my mind, I knew the mansion's legacy wasn't gone. It would remain a silent sentinel waiting for the next soul brave or foolish enough to enter, and I would never forget the price of courage. The mansion was quiet now, eerily so. The oppressive weight that had haunted me since the moment I stepped inside had lifted, but a strange emptiness replaced it. I expected relief to wash over me, yet all I felt was the echo of what I had endured. Lydia helped me to my feet. Her lantern's soft glow illuminated the remnants of the library, scattered books, and the cracked mirror. The air smelled damp but cleaner, as though the house itself was exhaling after centuries of holding its breath. You did it, she said again, her voice steady but filled with awe. The souls are free, Ashwood is gone, or at least its power is broken. I nodded, though my mind was still reeling. I saw them all, the people trapped here, and my brother, I saw him again. My voice cracked. I almost lost myself to guilt. You were tested, Lydia said softly, and you endured. That's what matters, but the house, it leaves its mark. You'll carry this memory, this weight forever. That's the price of survival and redemption. we began walking back through the hallways, now oddly different. Shadows no longer lurked menacingly, the mirrors reflected only our images. The air felt lighter, warmer even, and the sense of danger that had accompanied every step was gone. Yet, in the corners of my mind, unease lingered. "This place, it's alive," I murmured. "And even if Ashwood is gone, I feel it watching." Lydia paused, looking at me with a serious expression. "You're not wrong. Houses like this don't die, they wait, they linger, and though you freed the trapped souls, the mansion has a way of testing new ones. It leaves a legacy." I swallowed hard, thinking of the people who would inevitably stumble into the mansion in the future, and I thought of myself forever changed. We reached the main hall. Moonlight spilled through the shattered windows, casting irregular patterns on the floor. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying a cold chill that rustled the overgrown weeds in the garden. It seemed almost celebratory, as if the mansion was acknowledging our victory. Lydia turned to me. "You should rest. There's a room upstairs untouched by Ashwood's influence. You'll sleep there tonight. Tomorrow, we decide what to do next." I wanted to protest, to keep moving, to ensure that nothing could ever rise again, but exhaustion pinned me to the floor. My body ached in ways I hadn't known possible, my mind frayed from fear, guilt, and tension. I allowed her to guide me upstairs to the guest room she had prepared. The room was modest, furnished with a bed, a chair, and a small writing desk. Moonlight streamed through the cracked window, illuminating dust motes that danced lazily in the air. I sank onto the bed, feeling my body sink into relief and weariness simultaneously. "You'll need strength," Lydia said, adjusting the lantern. "Tomorrow we look for a way to seal this place, to ensure no one else suffers." I nodded, too drained to speak. My thoughts drifted unbidden to every face I had seen in the mansion, the frightened children, the desperate adults, the tormented souls, and my brother. Their lives, their stories had become a part of me, etched into my memory with indelible ink. As I closed my eyes, a memory surfaced, unexpected yet vivid. My brother's smile, small and fleeting, filled my mind. It reminded me why I had pressed forward, why I had faced Ashwood, and why I had survived. That image became a beacon in the darkness of my fatigue. Yet sleep eluded me. Shadows in the room seemed to move imperceptibly, and the silence of the mansion felt almost unnatural. I tried to shake the lingering fear, to remind myself that the house had been defeated. But deep down, I knew that some part of it remained, a whisper, a presence, a warning. Hours passed, though I couldn't tell how many. The wind outside rose and fell, the moon traversed the sky, and my exhaustion finally overcame my vigilance. I drifted into a dreamless sleep. When I woke, the morning sun poured through the broken windows, bathing the room in pale light. For the first time in what felt like weeks, I could breathe without the weight of fear pressing down on me. I stepped outside, the air crisp and alive. The garden, wild and untamed, seemed to welcome me. Birds called in the distance, their songs a stark contrast to the eerie silence of the mansion the night before. I felt the first real hint of hope in what had become a nightmare. Lydia joined me on the porch, her expression unreadable. "The house," she said slowly, "is quiet now, but quiet doesn't mean gone. There are artifacts, objects imbued with Ashwood's power. We need to find them and destroy them. Only then can this place truly be abandoned." I nodded. The thought of returning to the depths of the mansion to confront any lingering threats made my stomach twist, but I also knew it was necessary. Freedom for the souls, redemption for myself, and closure for my brother depended on it. As we moved through the house, gathering items that seemed significant, ancient tomes, strange relics, and mirrors, we noticed that the mansion seemed almost cooperative. The oppressive weight had lifted, and shadows no longer sought to deceive us. Yet I couldn't shake the sense that the house was testing us in subtler ways, guiding us toward something deeper, something still hidden. In the study, we discovered a hidden compartment behind an old bookshelf. Inside lay a small chest, locked but fragile with age. When Lydia pried it open, we found letters, diaries, and a peculiar crystal glowing faintly in the morning light. "These belonged to Ashwood himself," she said, holding the crystal carefully. "Or perhaps to the person who became it. Whatever it is, it's the source of the mansion's corruption." I reached for the crystal, and a cold shiver shot through my body. A voice, distant but distinct, whispered, "Do not release me." I swallowed, feeling the final threads of fear intertwine with resolve. This was the last step, the final act. To destroy this crystal, to sever the mansion's hold once and for all, I had to confront not just Ashwood's remnants, but every shadow of doubt and fear within myself. Lydia watched me closely. "Are you ready?" she asked. I took a deep breath, gripping the crystal tightly. "I have to be." And as the mansion loomed silently around us, I felt the weight of countless lives, the hope of the liberated souls, and the memory of my brother all coalesce into one unstoppable determination. Whatever happened next, I would face it head on. The crystal pulsed faintly in my hand like a heartbeat trapped in stone. Its glow seemed to reach into my mind, dredging up memories I hadn't touched for years, my brother's laughter, the cold cruelty of Ashwood, and every moment that had led me here. Lydia stood a few steps away, her lantern casting long, wavering shadows across the study. Her expression was a mixture of caution and determination. "Whatever you do," she said, "don't let it see fear. That's how it survives, how it feeds." I nodded, though my hands trembled slightly. The mansion seemed to sense the crystal's movement. The walls themselves creaked and whispered as if the house was awakening, aware that its source of power had been disturbed. We moved cautiously toward the main hall where the mansion's influence had been strongest. Each step echoed unnaturally, the sound bouncing off walls and through empty corridors. My stomach churned, but I clenched my jaw and pressed forward. "You feel that?" I asked. Lydia paused. "Yes, the air is heavier here, thicker. Ashwood's essence, it lingers." As we reached the grand staircase, the crystal began to glow brighter. A low hum filled the air, resonating with a frequency that seemed to vibrate through my bones. Shadows twisted along the walls, forming shapes, faces, hands, eyes, all fleeting but unmistakably menacing. "Hold on," Lydia whispered, placing a hand on my arm. "It's trying to intimidate us. Ignore it. Focus on your purpose." I drew a deep breath, forcing my fear down into a cold, steady determination. The mansion's whispers grew louder, almost articulate. "You cannot destroy me. You will fail. You are mine." I shivered, but I stepped forward. The crystal's pulse matched the rhythm of my own heartbeat now, syncing with my body as though testing my resolve. We entered the main hall, the very heart of Ashwood's power. The remnants of broken furniture, shattered mirrors, and scorched books littered the floor. Sunlight streamed through cracks in the ceiling, but it did little to dispel the oppressive darkness that clung to the walls. "There," Lydia said, pointing to a massive mirror hanging above the fireplace. The frame was blackened, twisted with carvings that seemed to move when viewed out of the corner of the eye. The crystal's light reacted violently to the mirror, brightening and pulsing faster. I realized instantly this mirror was the core, the anchor of Ashwood's remaining power. Everything else was just extensions of its influence. Destroy the mirror and the mansion's hold would finally break. I stepped closer, raising the crystal. The mirror's surface rippled like water and a shadow emerged, a dark, twisted version of myself, a mockery of the courage I had summoned over the past days. "You cannot defeat me," it hissed in a voice that was both mine and Ashwood's. "All your pain, all your loss, it belongs to me." I felt a surge of anger, fear, and grief. Memories of my brother's disappearance flashed through my mind, the helplessness I had carried for years, and every life trapped in this mansion. That pain became fuel. "No," I said firmly, gripping the crystal tighter. "You don't get to claim that anymore." The shadow lunged from the mirror, its movements swift and unnatural. I held the crystal forward and the glow exploded, striking the apparition. It screamed, a sound that pierced my ears and rattled the walls, and recoiled into the mirror. Lydia shouted, "Now, strike the mirror." I slammed the crystal against the glass. The mirror shuddered violently, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. Shadows swirled and writhed, voices screaming in anger, fear, and despair. The mansion shook, dust falling from the ceiling. "Keep going," Lydia urged, her lantern flickering wildly. I struck the mirror again and again. Each impact sent a shockwave through the hall. The shadows thrashed, the air grew thick, and the mansion groaned as if in pain. I could feel Ashwood's essence clawing at my mind, trying to distract me, to break me. But I pushed through, recalling my brother's face, the faces of the trapped souls, and every promise I had made to survive and protect. Finally, with a deafening crack, the mirror shattered completely. The shadows screamed and dissipated into nothingness. The crystal's glow faded, leaving only a faint warmth in my palm. The mansion fell silent. For a long moment, nothing moved. The oppressive weight, the whispers, the sense of being watched, all gone. The sunlight streaming through the windows now seemed purer, warmer. Even the dust in the air seemed to settle more gently. Lydia let out a long breath, relief washing over her face. It's over, at least for now. I sank to the floor, exhausted but triumphant. The mansion had fought with everything it had, but we had survived. We had won. As we sat in the quiet, I realized how much I had changed. The fear, the anger, and the sorrow had forged me into something new. I had faced death, confronted my past, and emerged stronger. Do you think it will ever rise again? I asked, looking around the now quiet mansion. Lydia shook her head slowly. Places like this, they never truly die, but as long as people remember, as long as they remain vigilant, they can be contained, and you've done more than anyone before you. The souls are free and Ashwood's hold is broken. I nodded, letting the calm wash over me. The mansion, now nothing more than an empty, crumbling shell, no longer held power over us. We had faced its darkness and won. Yet deep down, I knew that some part of the mansion, some memory of Ashwood, would always linger. It was a lesson, a warning, and a reminder. Evil may hide, but courage, resilience, and love could shine even in the darkest places. As we left the mansion for the first time in days, the wind carried a faint whisper, barely audible, like a memory fading. I will return. I didn't look back. Not this time, because I knew that no matter what came next, I had the strength to face it. And for the first time in years, I truly felt free. The morning sunlight was harsh but somehow comforting. After days of near constant fear and tension, the world outside seemed almost foreign. Birds chirped, leaves rustled, and the distant hum of traffic reminded me that life went on beyond the walls of Ashwood's mansion. I took a deep breath, letting it fill my lungs and steady my racing heart. Lydia walked beside me, quiet but alert. Her eyes scanned the trees and the broken path as if expecting something or someone to emerge from the shadows at any moment. We need to document everything, she said softly, finally breaking the silence. Evidence of what happened here in case anyone else comes searching. People will need to know what Ashwood truly was. I nodded. I still had the crystal in my pocket, its faint warmth a reminder of the power we had faced. I pulled out a notebook, sketching the mansion's layout, the shattered mirror, and the strange markings that had lined the walls. Each page I filled made me feel a little more in control, like I was reclaiming the narrative from the chaos. I can't believe it's really over, I murmured, though the weight in my chest told me differently. Even in destruction, Ashwood's shadow would linger in memory, in fear, in nightmares. Lydia stopped and turned to me. It's over for now, but don't forget, some doors once opened never truly close. You'll feel it again, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but there's always a risk. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the chill her words brought. She was right, of course. The mansion wasn't alive in a normal sense, but the darkness it harbored, that might never truly disappear. We walked back toward the main road, the mansion behind us growing smaller with each step. I noticed that the forest around it seemed strangely still, almost mourning. Shadows clung to the tree trunks and the wind carried whispers that felt like echoes of the voices trapped inside. Do you ever think about what it wants? I asked, glancing at Lydia. Not Ashwood itself, the mansion, the crystal, whatever it was feeding on. She thought for a moment. Power, fear, pain, that's what it thrived on, and it's drawn to people like you, strong, resilient, stubborn, the ones who can resist its grip but might also be tempted to use its power for themselves. I shivered. The thought of Ashwood's influence still lingering in the world was unsettling. The crystal had been a tool, yes, but its potential, its danger, it was undeniable. When we reached the road, a car passed by, its headlights cutting through the morning haze. I realized with a mixture of relief and sorrow that the world had gone on without noticing what horrors had transpired just beyond the trees. Do you think anyone would believe us? I asked quietly. Even with proof? Lydia shook her head. No. People don't want to believe things they can't see, can't touch, but that doesn't make it any less real. You'll know and you'll remember, that's what matters. Her words comforted me and frightened me at the same time. I had faced death, confronted evil, and survived, but the cost had been heavy, not just in sleepless nights and fear, but in the way I felt changed, hardened, aware of shadows in every corner of the world. We reached my car, and I turned to glance one last time at the mansion, now barely visible through the thick trees. Even shattered and crumbling, it felt alive in a way that was hard to explain, like it was watching, waiting, biding its time. "Let's get out of here," Lydia said, her voice firm. "We've done what we can." I nodded, sliding into the driver's seat. The crystal remained warm in my pocket, a constant reminder of what we had faced and what we had survived. As we drove away, the mansion receded into the distance, swallowed by the forest. And yet I couldn't shake the feeling that our journey wasn't truly over. Shadows lingered, memories whispered, and the echoes of Ashwood's malevolence seemed to follow us like a faint fog. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in my house, creaking floors, wind against windows, even the hum of the refrigerator felt amplified, suspicious. I kept the crystal under my pillow, its warmth strangely comforting. I woke to a strange sensation, as if someone or something was watching me. The air in my room was heavy, almost suffocating, and the shadows in the corners seemed darker than usual. My stomach twisted in anxiety. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft but deliberate, carried on the wind through the cracked window. "You think it's over?" I froze. My heart pounded. This wasn't fear, it was recognition. I had survived, but the remnants of Ashwood's influence were persistent. They didn't attack openly. They tested, probed, and waited. I knew then that my life would never be the same. The mansion, Ashwood, the crystal, they had left an indelible mark on me. And though I had triumphed, I understood that evil once touched leaves traces that are impossible to fully erase. I looked at Lydia's text on my phone. "Are you okay? Did you sleep?" I hesitated, then typed back, "For now, but something's not right, I feel it." Her reply was almost immediate. "Stay calm, trust yourself, you've survived worse, but don't ignore the signs, be ready." I placed the crystal on my desk, its faint glow pulsing like a heartbeat. It was both a trophy and a warning. The mansion was gone, Ashwood's power broken for now. But I knew better than to believe this was the end. Evil, I realized, wasn't always about destruction. Sometimes it lingered, subtle, patient, waiting for the perfect moment to rise again. And in that moment, I would have to face it, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. Sleep finally claimed me, but dreams were restless. I saw the mansion not as it was, but as it might have been, whole, powerful, alive. Shadows twisted around me, and I felt Ashwood's presence, cold and calculating. And then I woke, heart pounding, drenched in sweat, but with one clear thought: I had survived. I had faced the darkness, and I would be ready if it ever returned, because survival wasn't just about escaping. It was about preparing, learning, and understanding that the world was far stranger and far more dangerous than anyone wanted to admit. And I had been given a second chance. A chance to fight again, and I wouldn't waste it. Days passed in a fragile sense of normalcy. The mansion was gone, the forest behind it silent, and yet the weight of those events clung to me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Even sunlight felt heavy at times, and every noise, a door creaking, a branch snapping outside, made my pulse spike. I tried to convince myself I was safe. Lydia had returned to her city, promising to check in regularly, her messages filled with cautious optimism. "You survived, that's more than most can say," she wrote one morning, "but don't let your guard down." Her words echoed in my mind more than I wanted. I could no longer dismiss the feeling that someone or something was watching, waiting. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the crystal's glow, the twisted shadows of the mansion's interior, and the faces of those trapped in its darkness. It was during one of those restless nights that I noticed it. A subtle shift in the air, a vibration almost too faint to detect. I froze, listening. My apartment was silent, too silent. And then came the whisper, softer than the wind, yet unmistakable: "You can't hide." I jumped from the bed, heart hammering, the crystal now burning against my palm with a warmth that felt alive. It pulsed like a warning, as if trying to communicate a message I couldn't fully understand. The next morning, I tried to dismiss it as paranoia. After everything I had survived, fear was natural. But when I reached my desk, I found something that made my blood run cold. a piece of paper folded and placed neatly beside the crystal as if someone had been there while I slept. On it was a single word written in jagged, almost unnatural handwriting: Ashwood. I staggered back. The mansion was gone. Ashwood was gone. How could this name appear here in my apartment when only I and Lydia had even known it? Panic rose like ice in my veins. I called Lydia immediately. Her voice, calm but serious, made me realize she had anticipated this. "It's not over," she said flatly. "It never is. That place, that power, it doesn't die, not completely, and it can reach farther than we ever imagined." I swallowed hard. But how? "The mansion, it's destroyed. Physical destruction doesn't erase influence," she explained. "Ashwood, whatever it truly was, it existed in more than just stone and wood. It was energy, dark and persistent. You felt it because it sensed strength in you, and now," she paused, letting the words hang. "It's testing you." Testing. The word made my stomach twist. I had survived fire, shadows, whispers, and terror beyond imagination. And yet the idea that this was just the beginning made the hairs on my arms stand on end. For the next few days, subtle changes began to creep into my life. Small, almost imperceptible things: books moved slightly, shadows appearing in corners where they shouldn't, faint whispers when the apartment was otherwise silent. At first, I doubted my own senses, blaming sleep deprivation or the lingering trauma from the mansion. But the crystal, resting on my desk, pulsed with a faint light every time I noticed these disturbances. Its warmth seemed to react to something invisible, almost sentient. And with it came a growing sense of urgency. One evening, as rain streaked down the windows, I felt compelled to open the notebook I had used to document the mansion. The sketches, notes, and diagrams seemed innocent at first, but as I flipped through them, a pattern emerged, a hidden sequence, subtle but deliberate, connecting rooms, markings, and the crystal itself. It was then I realized I had underestimated the mansion's intelligence, or perhaps its will. It hadn't just been a place of horror, it had been a conduit, a trap, a mind of its own. And even in destruction, its consciousness had survived, reaching out to test me. I reached for the crystal, its warmth intensifying. My fingers trembled as I felt a tug, almost as if it wanted to guide me somewhere. And suddenly, a vision struck me, a figure, shadowed but unmistakably human in form, standing at the edge of a forest not far from my city. It was watching, patient and deliberate. I knew instinctively that this was no random haunting. Someone or something was drawing me toward the next stage of the ordeal. Ashwood's influence had a plan, and I was part of it, whether I wanted to be or not. Lydia's texts became more frequent, almost urgent. "Trust your instincts. Follow the signs, but don't go alone. Prepare for confrontation. It's coming." The reality settled in. I had survived the mansion's destruction, but survival had only been the beginning. What awaited me now was personal, targeted, and potentially far more dangerous. And deep down, I understood something I hadn't admitted before. Fear wasn't the enemy, it was the guide. Each whisper, each subtle movement, each pulse of the crystal was preparing me for the inevitable confrontation. I packed a bag that night, leaving notes and instructions for anyone who might find me. A sense of purpose replaced the fear in my chest. Whatever was coming, I wouldn't be passive. I wouldn't be a victim again, because Ashwood had taught me one thing: survival wasn't enough. Strength, vigilance, and cunning were essential. And this time I would meet the darkness on my own terms. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights glimmered, reflections dancing on wet asphalt. Shadows clung to alleyways, trees, and corners, and somewhere just beyond sight a presence lingered. Patient, calculating, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I took a deep breath, feeling the crystal's warmth pulse in my hand. And I knew with certainty that the final chapter of this story was approaching, and I had no choice but to face it head on. I followed the pull of the crystal, each step a mixture of dread and determination. The city streets seemed unnervingly empty, shadows stretching unnaturally long, as if the night itself was holding its breath. I knew Ashwood's influence was near, waiting, patient. The mansion's horrors were only a prelude. This was the real test. The edge of the forest loomed ahead. Its trees were gnarled, their branches like skeletal hands reaching out. My instincts screamed, yet I pressed forward, the crystal pulsating like a heartbeat against my palm. Every instinct in me told me I was being drawn into something far larger than a simple haunting. And then I saw it, a figure emerging from the shadows. Tall, imposing, cloaked in darkness that seemed alive, shifting unnaturally. I stopped, my pulse skyrocketing, but I didn't retreat. This was the confrontation I had been preparing for, the moment Ashwood had been orchestrating. "You've come," a voice hissed, low and distorted, yet eerily human. I wondered how long it would take. I gritted my teeth. "I'm done running." The figure stepped closer, and I could see the faint glint of eyes, cold, calculating, ancient. The air around us crackled, the forest itself seeming to respond to its presence. Every instinct screamed danger, yet there was an undeniable familiarity, as though this entity was connected to me in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. "You survived fire, shadow, and despair," it said. "But survival alone is meaningless. Power demands sacrifice." "I'm not here to survive anymore," I shot back. "I'm here to end this, to end you." Laughter echoed through the forest, low and chilling. "End me? You don't understand, child. I am not a being to end. I am Ashwood, and I am eternal. You felt my influence, and you will feel it again." The crystal in my hand flared suddenly, blindingly bright. Its warmth became a torrent, pulsing with energy that resonated with my own heartbeat. I realized then that this wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon, a key, a mirror of my own strength and will. As the figure advanced, I raised the crystal, focusing on every memory, every horror, every moment of fear I had endured. I channeled it all into a single, unwavering intention: to survive, to fight, to reclaim my life. The darkness lunged. Shadows stretched, twisting like liquid, forming hands, faces, and snarling figures that reached for me. But the crystal burned brighter, cutting through the darkness, a beacon of defiance. I shouted, pouring every ounce of willpower into it, and the forest erupted in light. Ashwood screamed, a sound that shook the ground and rattled the trees. Its form convulsed, fracturing, the shadows collapsing inward. "You cannot contain me," the voice hissed, weaker, fading. I advanced, stepping forward without fear. "I don't need to contain you, I just need to end your hold on me." With one final surge, the crystal pulsed like a heartbeat, and Ashwood's form shattered into fragments of shadow that evaporated into the night air. Silence fell, deep and profound, the kind that makes your own heartbeat sound loud. I sank to my knees, exhausted but victorious. The forest seemed to breathe again, shadows retreating, light filtering through the trees. The terror, the whispers, the relentless dread, they were gone. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift from my chest. But even as relief washed over me, a part of me remained vigilant. Ashwood's power had been immense, and though its presence was broken, its echoes might linger. I tucked the crystal into my bag, resolved to keep it safe, to understand it, and to never let it control another life. The city lights ahead promised safety, but also a world that would never fully understand what had occurred. I walked toward them, each step a reclaiming of my life, my choices, my freedom. And though fear still lingered in the corners of my mind, it was tempered now with strength, resilience, and the knowledge that I had faced darkness and won. Lydia met me at the city's edge, her eyes wide with relief. "You made it," she whispered, almost in awe. "I did," I said, voice steady, "and I'll make sure nothing like Ashwood ever haunts anyone again." For the first time in a long while, I smiled, not out of joy, but out of quiet victory. The journey had been brutal, terrifying, and relentless. But I had survived, learned, and emerged stronger. And somewhere deep down, I knew that Ashwood's shadows might always linger in memory, but they would never touch me again. The night sky stretched above, clear and infinite, stars glittering like distant promises. I inhaled deeply, savoring the freedom, the calm, and the sense of finally being alive. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe that the nightmare was truly over.